Yeah. Sometimes they say you should have been there. If you were only there, you'd probably believe more. Thomas had a problem with that. Well, it started about 3 years ago. Me and Johnny and my dad were sitting in the boat and we were mending nets. We'd been out fishing all night and we didn't catch anything. But we saw off to the left there, Pete and Andy were coming down the beach there, and there was another guy with them. And as they were walking, there was something about this other guy. I kind of like stood up in my boat and I watched this guy, and he just reached out and he said, "Come, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men." So I turned to look to Johnny, and he was already standing, and he was climbing out of the boat already, as he saw the same thing that I did. So we climbed out of the boat and we followed him. His name was Jesus. And we followed him to Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judea, all beyond the Jordan. And everywhere he went, he was preaching and teaching in the synagogues. He was healing people. You know, lame people were walking. People that were crippled, I mean, from life, you know. We knew these people. We've seen them in the streets. Blind men were seeing for the first time. The deaf and the dumb were speaking and hearing, and just he's healing everybody, casting out demons. We went everywhere with him, everywhere, and it was like you should have been there. This the one time this guy named Jarius, I recognized him. He was some kind of ruler guy, you know, and anyway, he was pretty well off, and he came to Jesus and he said, "Hey, come heal my daughter. She's dying. And she's like 12 years old." And Jesus is like, "Yeah, come on, let's go." And so we're all just kind of following. We're trying to make our way through the crowd, you know. It was really crowded all the time. Everywhere we went, it was like crowds of people. It was all around us. And we were kind of like, you know, herding the crowd away from Jesus and trying to protect him, you know. And anyway, all of a sudden, Jesus stops in the middle of it and he turns around and he says, "Who touched me?" We're like, "Hey, man, look, there's all kinds of people around here, Jesus. What are you talking about?" He says, "I felt the power draw out from me. Somebody touched me." And then there was this little lady, and she said that she'd been bleeding for like years, you know, like 10 or 12 years or something. And all she wanted to do was touch his garment. And he says, "Your faith has made you whole. Go." And during this time, though, by then somebody had come up, a servant of this Jarius guy, say, "Hey, man, the baby's dead already." And Jesus is like, "No, she's only sleeping." So we went ahead and went over to the Jarius' house, and of course he called to me and Pete and John, and you know he always called the three of us in, and we went into the room, and he told the girl to get up, and the spirit returned back to the girl, and she got up and she was raised from the dead, and Jesus told us, "Don't tell anybody." He told the parents that too. She was only sleeping. There was another time we were out. Jesus was teaching and preaching on this hillside, and there was like 5,000 families. I mean, tons of people up there, you know. And it was getting real late. Excuse me. And we went to Jesus and we're like, "Hey, man, it's getting real late. Should we send these people away or what? You know, who's going to feed them?" And Jesus is like, "You feed them." All we got is some little boy over here. He's got 5 loaves of bread and a couple of fish. And he said, "Well," Jesus like, "bring him to me." And we brought him to him, and he lifted him up to the heavens, and he blessed them, and he started handing us out food. And he says, "Feed the people." So we fed them. And after a while, we collected up, it was like 12 baskets of leftovers. Should have been there. And I wish you could have been there, because you'd probably believe. There was another time that after we left outside of Bethsaida, we went to another area, and we were up on this hill, and he called me and Peter and John, and we went with him to this hillside, and he went up on the hill, and all of a sudden his face lit up like the sun. And it was just so bright and so amazing. And all of a sudden, there was Moses with him on one side and Elijah on the other. And it was just awesome. And he's just talking back and forth. And we didn't know what to think, you know. And then Pete, he steps up, you know, right in the middle of all this. Like, yeah, oh, hey, dude, let's build an altar, you know, for each one of you. And we'll build a tabernacle. And right in the middle of Pete interrupting this, God steps in. And there was this voice out of the cloud. And it said, "Behold, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him." And we fell to our faces, man, flat on the ground. By the time we looked back up, it was all gone, except Jesus was still there. And he told us, "Don't tell anybody." And until now, I haven't told a soul. You know, another time, well, the last time I saw him, we were in the garden. And, before the garden, we were in this upper room. You know, it was Passover. And we were having the Passover supper. And then after the supper, you know, Jesus washed our feet. Master became a servant and he washed our feet. We were just amazed and we were bewildered at what was going on. And Pete's like, no, don't wash my feet, man. And Jesus said, if I don't wash your feet, then you have no part. And he's like, hey, wash the whole body. You know, and we all kind of felt the same way, you know. And so we're like, okay, wash us, Jesus, wash our feet. And he washed our feet. And then afterwards he passed around this bread and this wine, and he broke the bread and he divided it among us. He said, this is my body. This is my body. Eat all of you of it. And so we're like eating the bread, and then he took some wine and he poured it in a cup and he passed it around. He says, this is my blood, the blood of the new covenant. And drink all of you of it for the remission of sins. And we're okay. And so we're like partaking and we're doing this. And then we sang a couple of hymns. And next thing you know, we're headed out to the garden. Gethsemane is the name of that garden. And Jesus, we always went there to go pray. It was like Jesus' favorite spot, you know. And so we're in the garden, and Jesus takes me and Pete and John, and we'll go off to the side there, and he says, hey, you guys, pray. Pray with me. Pray. Pray, Peter, or Satan will sift you like wheat, you know. And he went off a little bit further, and he started praying by himself. And it's kind of like, it was late, you know, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I nodded off, and Jesus came back, and he woke us up. He says, can't you guys just pray for a little bit, you know? And we're like, what, man, what? And anyway, so he went off again, and we kind of 3 times he did this, you know, and woke us up. And the 3rd time after he woke us up, Judas came with his garrison. The whole temple guard came, you know, and he walks right up to Jesus and kisses him on the cheek. Jesus calmly says, so you betray your master and friend with a kiss. And the next thing you know, there's a big commotion going on, and they're trying to tackle us, and Pete draws out his sword, hacks off some guy's ear, Malchus, I think his name was, and so we're like trying to, you know, just struggling back and forth, and during all this, I kind of looked over and glanced, and Jesus just calmly reached down and picked this ear up off the ground and puts it back on the side of this guy's head and heals him. And he tells Pete, hey, put down the sword. If you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Man, after all of that, I saw my opportunity. I split. I was out of there. And I ran, and I ran, and I ran, and I ran. And I don't know, I ran. I have no idea what happened after that, except that John, you know, I saw John the next day, and he told me he went all the way to the cross with Jesus. And I was a coward, and I ran away. My little John, my little brother, was there. Pete was there for a little while. He was in the courtyard, and he ran. And John said he saw nailing Jesus to the cross, and as they were nailing him to the cross, he said, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. And then they crucified our Lord. And he died. And then we were... Then they put him in a grave. They sealed the stone. sealed it, rolled this big stone in front of it. It was like 3 days later. We were in this upper room, that same room. Hardly slept all night, for the last 2 nights. I heard a commotion at the door, and I looked up, and there was Peter talking to Mary. She came knocking on the door, and it was like, real bright and early. It was before the sunrise, and anyway, she said they took the body. Jesus is gone. We don't know where they're taking him. And so Pete headed out the door, and then Johnny, he ran right behind him, and they split. And the rest of us are staying in the upper room, and we don't know what's going on. It was just total confusion and chaos, and Pete and John came back, and they said that the body was gone, and they said that Jesus was alive. And we're like, how can we know that Jesus is alive, and the day went by, and it was all gone, and we were still confused, and things were carrying on, and we were getting ready to sit down for supper, and all of a sudden there was a calm about the room. Calm about the room. The doors were locked. The windows were shut. Then there was a breeze. A nice, cool breeze. And there he stood. He was standing right there. He was standing right there. He's alive. He came to us like he said. He's alive. And he's alive today. Jesus is alive. Thank you for watching. This is Jim Powell with JPO Legacy. I pray that you would hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. There's more to come. God bless you.